welcome to another weekend here on the platform. My name is Sam Omashe. My column will be read to you shortly.
When people go into politics, they don't enter it as a profession. In that case, they want to excel in competence alone. They join clubs as a social amenity to put up their legs and crease their faces with a smile. The good politician must espouse competence. Aristotle prescribes that men must join politics only after excelling in their professions. So politics is faith without reverence, family without blood and bones, profession where competence is only a fraction. It is club where you plot while pouring out a drink, or wolfing down pounded yam, a theater of war and play. So how do you make a friend in that quicksand? That's what I reflect as Bola Ahmed Tinubu turned 70. He's the political friend's friend. He knows how to make a friend. It's because he doesn't know how to make a fool. Or shall we say, he knows how to make a fool unlike any man. He who sees himself as a fool is only waiting to be a friend. Or he's a friend who turns a fool. When a fool, he's plotting to be a friend again. Rather than see the fool, he sees opportunity. He knows that every man has a virtue. Anyone can repent and bring his virtue to the cause. What is that cause? Democracy, a progressive chapter, an army of transforming the society. But for that quality, Nigeria will not have Lagos as the governance model. Humans are the great resource. Without men, what is the place of vision? He has an eye for talent, so he surrounds himself with the best. That made Lagos the state among states. He brought that acumen to the national stage. With the APC, he effected almost single-handedly the most successful and vast political coalition in the nation's history. Friends have tended to be more intense for a man like Tinubu because he has to have many of them. Because the bigger the politician, the bigger the circle. And who is bigger than he in Nigerian politics since 1999? Hence, he accommodates turncoats. He makes enemies even when he's not aware of them, because he has to juggle indulgences, tasks, and positions. It happens often. He has to balance, and it will never be just all the time. He will only have to try harder. Ironically, some who are favored also turn against him after tasting the forbidden fruit. Sometimes when the person returns, he prioritizes him over those who have been home. Tinubu himself has admitted that privately. I discussed it with a friend, and he referred to the prodigal son. Tinubu lays no claim to sainthood. He fights with malice, but of a peculiar sort. He does not exercise his malice with bitterness, but as a store of facts. There is no word in English to define a sort of grudge. He uses it to fight you when it's necessary, but also to embrace you when it's necessary. In this regard, he exercises his gift with a great judge of talent, but not always astute as a judge of character. But Tinubu likes friends. Hence, some who cynically leave always know a party awaits their return, like the prodigal son. Does it pain him when men he made turn against him? I asked him about it when I wondered how he handles such matters. He said, "If it pains you that they behave like this, how do you expect me to feel?" Tinubu looks beyond incidents to the goal.
I want to look at, now you mentioned a romantic poet. I am wondering whether in your piece on nature, you saw yourself as a sort of romantic poet, but then romantic poets were seen as ideologically conservative. But you don't see yourself as that. I mean, you are a forebear of change. The romantics were using nature to actually glorify the past, glorify stated or state values, and so on. But yours, you are actually interrogating our indulgence.
Oh, extremely important as nature with an uppercase N. Nature and our earth. Well, many people have called me romantic, and my revered teacher and former vice chancellor of the University of Ibadan, Professor Banjo, actually flattered me, by comparing my work to the works of my poems, to the poems of William Wordsworth. That's what so. Yes, I consider this really flattering. But I tell you, nature, he is right, and so many others that have commented on this in my poetics are also right. Nature is central to my writing. I think it's because it is central to my consciousness. It is also central to my thinking, and also central to my environment. Son of a farmer, I understand the language of the earth. I understand the language of the tree. I understand the language of the wind. I know what it means for the rain to fall. I know what it means for the rain not to fall. I'm surrounded by nature. I understand the inevitability, the existential significance of water, because I'm an Osun person, so I cannot escape the ambit of nature. But talking about the Romantics, incidentally, the Romantics were actually some of my favorites, particularly their relationship with nature, from William Blake through Shelley, Keats, Wordsworth, Coleridge, and Byron, the man whose name you mentioned. I might disagree with you a little bit. Yes, as time went on, the glorification of nature became too much, especially in the works of people like Wordsworth. But that is without prejudice to the wonderful social, mental, and cultural revolution that, and political, that they caused. For example, William Blake, with the poem London, I wander through every chartered street where the chartered Thames does flow, and mark in every face I meet marks of weakness, marks of war. That was 1744. Wonderful poem. Each time I read that poem, talking again about the point you were making about history and literature, I remember London the way it is now. Then I remember Lagos, our Lagos, that kind of thing. And then his songs of experience, they were Shelley, who wrote the poem Men of England. Why do you venerate the men that lay you low? I mean, so so it was that. We had people like, now Shelley and Keats were friends. Shelley was an aesthete. He didn't really talk about anything social or whatever. It was his personal anguish and so on. Beautiful poems that he wrote. So it was a mixed group, quite right. Well, those were English romantics. But what about African literature, African culture, African poetry, and so on? And the reliance on nature, the exploration of nature in all these works. So my background gave me a lot about what to talk about, and also how to use nature or natural icons as images, and then look at the complexity of issues. In a poem I did on water, in this poem, I'm looking at water as one of the necessities of life, one of the facilitators of life. Water is kind, water is beneficent, but water could also be cruel. If you have ever seen a flood, you know what I mean. What about fire? In its orange color, beautiful and so on. We use it for cooking, but it also burns down people's houses. So the complexity we're looking for in literary works is also there in nature itself. And this has helped me a lot too, the way I use animal images. The dictators of our country must be very familiar with my use of the jackal, of the hyena, of the cheetah. Yeah, the hyena. And the followers who are indolent must also remember what happens to a lamb that doesn't know how to protect itself, or the antelope. So I think a lot depends upon what we really do with nature. But with me, I think about things in natural terms.
I saw the poem by Wordsworth, "The world is too much with us." When he said the world is too much with us, late and soon, getting and spending will lay waste our powers. I think that itself is probably a precursor of this environmentalism that you have tried to privilege in your poems. Now, the other irony that comes to me is the fact that while in snap songs, you use a lot of nature images to actually portray the distress and anomie of the Nigerian society. In green, Signs of Our Alien Planet, you say that nature is more innocent. Is the poet not also complicit in the devastation of nature? Is the poet ever reflecting on the fact that before the industrialists destroyed nature, the wordsmith?
I think the poet has always been on the side of nature, really. It was from poets that the world heard for the first time about the impact of the Industrial Revolution, the negative impact of the Industrial Revolution, about what has happened to the village, because what happened was that the villages were getting empty because people were going to London. Everybody thought London was the place where everything was, and London became congested and crime-ridden and so on, and the villages were pining away. Many of the poets wrote about London, but many of them also went to the countryside. Just as we see Lagos today, we are writing about Lagos, we're also writing about the countryside that has been left behind. My point, especially, there was a lecture I delivered at the University of Ibadan, must have been 2019. And in that lecture, what I'm saying is that it is to the benefit of the writer to preserve nature, to make sure that nature does not die, because nature is inevitable to all writers, which is the way I really see it. You look at nature images in Shoyinka, in Chinua Achebe, in Ojaide, and so many of the other poets, you really know what I mean. What does it mean for the river to be polluted? As Gabriel Okara has complained about. What does it mean for you to hack down the mountains because you're looking for gold that is supposed to be hidden in their bellies? What happens when you begin to cut down the trees all over the place, when we can no longer have a place to stand and stare? So wherever the fate of nature moves, that looks to me like the way the nature of poetry also moves. And it is not just poetry. We're also talking about allied arts, such as painting, such as sculpture, because there are nature images. I mean, Dimazu Woko.
William Blake did that. William Blake.
William Blake. Yeah, William Blake. Yeah, who was that's right. On a brape, on a brape, or even on a brape, the sculptor from I think Fale or so, or the works of the Delegate Obiora Udechukwu. You know, the natural images are there, and what I see, especially in Delegate and Obiora Udechukwu, is an attempt to use nature satirically so as to stoke our consciousness, to make sure we never forget. And one of the drawings of Obiora Udechukwu that I will never forget is called The Road to Abuja. I have written a poem with that title, and I've used it in my creative writing classes. Here, this is a drawing by Udechukwu, The Road to Abuja. Come, study this painting. If possible, go to Abuja if you have the money, read about it, and then write a poem about it. So, yes, nature is not just necessary for artistic creation, it is also inevitable. There is also a sense of morality in it, a sense of moderation and temperance. Great art wages its own war against excess, against greed, the things that, and also reminds us that when we have taken our share in the garden, we must make sure that we leave the trees behind. As Native Americans would say, we did not inherit this earth from our ancestors, we borrowed it from our children. So a sense of the future, a sense of the future. It is our duty to make sure that we preserve this and we make sure that humanity does not forget.
There is an incantatory quality to your poetry. Sometimes, do you feel that the former property itself lends you to the school, and I've asked you this question before, of aestheticism? That is, sometimes it is art for art's sake, because sometimes the musicality of the poetry sometimes has the capacity to draw from the point of view of the reader the message. So probably you are following the rhythm, you are following the sounds, you are following the rhymes, not too much of rhymes, but the formal properties. And it has a way of dulling the sense to actually the urgency of your thematic obsessions.
Oh, obsession indeed. What a word. Thematic obsession, yes, but also aesthetic obsession. You see, I'm a scholar, and I teach and I read and I do some writing too in that area, literary theory. Balance between the two, that is, balance between the subject or the content of your work and the way, the medium and the style you have used in articulating this. If it is too factual, too aggressively topical, too aggressively literal, then it loses its value as a work of art. On the other hand, if it is too soporific and too sweet, rather syrupy, then it becomes some kind of chloroform. So you get lost in the music and you forget the subject. So I understand the point you are making here. And that is always in my consciousness. we have to make it beautiful to begin with. Making it beautiful is also making it musical. Poetry and music cannot do without each other for 1 second. No, when we talk about rhyme, we talk about rhythm, we talk about alliteration, onomatopoeia, and so on and so forth. We are talking about the management of the linguistic resources of a language in the expression or in the service of art, particularly literary art. Yeah. But there is a trick here. There is a series I have been toying with in my Nation Sunday column. Tere pampa, tere pampa, tere mina mina, tere king. Tere pampa, tere pampa, tere mina mina, tere. Now, the music is there, quite all right. You are reading it, and you are reading it with your eyes, but you're also reading it with your ears. At a point, you don't do this. The last one I did, I think, is about a country that lives close to the river that is dying of thirst. It is still music. The music is there, but it doesn't take much time for people to know that there is a country that swims in petroleum that doesn't have enough to serve its own people. So the parable, yes, the parable is there, and I must also confess that I'm music biased. I come from a very, very musical family. My father was a singer and a song composer, and he was also a drummer. And I started my early life on the stage and actually listening to drums and so on. So when I say that ideas come to me in natural terms, that is good. That is it. Their expression comes to me in musical terms. I hear my words before I put them down. Again, am I being extraordinarily ingenious in this? No, it's the culture, it's the empowerment that our culture has and our languages have placed in our hands. I tell you, especially the ones whose characteristics I know very well, the core group of languages or Niger Congo. You talk about Yoruba, Urobo, Shekiri, Idoma, and Epic, Bibio. Look at the way music comes so naturally to the people in their expression and so on. And then you go further south until you get to Central Africa, the Congo. My God. That is the country of cha-cha-cha. Little boys will fashion a musical instrument from little things, and before you know it, they are doing it. So, yeah, that is music. That is the honey of art. When I see people making music that way, I owe a lot to Sunny Ade. I owe a lot to Eddie Okonta. I owe a lot to Obe. I owe a lot to Victor Waifo. I don't know if you saw the enthusiastic essay I wrote, a tribute I wrote for him.
I saw it, yes.
When he passed away. Yes, I owe a lot to Roy Chicago, Billy Ojo, and Eddie Okonta, and so on. Not only that, I owe a lot to the Beatles. We were the Beatles generation, more or less. We were in high school when the numbers that really established their fame were coming out. 1963, 64, 65, 66, and so on and so forth. And I still talk about the Beatles in my classes. They are not the only pop musicians, but there is a certain unforgettability about their music and their melody. They have melody, and melody is extremely important. Poetry without melody is like sugarcane without the juice, really. Yeah. Great poets that I really know have been. Can you read Shakespeare without really listening to him? His iambic pentameter. What about the romantics we've talked about? What about T.S. Eliot? Let us go, therefore, you and I, when the sky is spread against the sky, or something like a patient etherized upon a table, and you
upon the table.
Yes. Or
The love song of J. Alfred Prufrock.
Afrock. Yes. Or J.P. Clark. Yes. The influence those people had on us when we were growing up, Casualties, for example, or many of the poems in Read in the Tide, or music, Inevitable. I wish I had more, really.
I can go on and discuss so many things on your poetry. Wish to say thank you very much again, sir. We have been talking with the eminent poet and scholar Niyi Osundare. And these are his books, Snap Songs and Green Size of Our Alien Planet. And you can have a copy. Very, very, very enthralling to just go through them poem after poem. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you very much, Sam.
We continue with the poem series, The Politician, and it will be read to you now.
One train, one rail. No way, one bomb, many wrecks. In their dreams, it's firecrackers, until ribs more than crack. Squeaks beneath the tracks, fear bullets blood. How many rallies, vote rhetorics can turn back time for fresh doctor or sister with bullets in the gut?
Thank you for being on this show. You can join me on my column at www.samomashe.com and at my Twitter column at Sam Omashe. And until next time, be good.